welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm Alyssa Lansdale, and we have a really exciting session for you today. Elevate your approach to business with Canadian business leaders through the Canada Business Talk series in association with our exclusive banking partner, RBC, shipping partner, UPS, and accounting software partner, Xero. As I mentioned, I'm Alyssa Lansdale, your media host for Canadian SME Business Magazine. I'll tell you a bit about myself first. I founded Rockstar Communications in 2020. It's a leadership development firm as a way to unite my distinct passions and strengths in the leadership communications and media spaces. And since 2011, I've had the privilege and pleasure of helping hundreds, and maybe at this point we're at 1,000, I don't know, leaders across the globe influence their teams and stakeholders with authenticity, embracing their imperfection and having impact. And we would like to begin now by acknowledging the land on which we gather and on which the region of Peel operates. It's part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples have inhabited and cared for this land and continue to do so today. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe peoples, the land that is home to the Métis and most recently the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land and by doing so, give our respect to its first inhabitants. Our mission at Canadian SME is to provide essential resources, tools, facts, and data to anyone aspiring to start a business in Canada. We are dedicated to advancing small-scale entrepreneurs, contributing not only to the Canadian economy, but also to our global reputation. Our magazine recognizes and celebrates the hard work of entrepreneurs and helps them gain the recognition they deserve. Additionally, our events like the SME Awards, the Small Business Show, and the Small Business Summit provide a unique platform for small business owners to share their success stories and inspire others. Last year marked a significant milestone for us with the launch of Indigenous SME Business Magazine. This publication is a testament to our commitment to celebrating the unique histories and contributions of our Indigenous communities. Together with Canadian SME and Indigenous SME Business Magazine, we continue to empower and uplift our diverse small business community. Canada Business Talks is your gateway to elevating your business to new heights. And in collaboration with RBC and UPS, this series connects you with prominent Canadian business leaders who share their invaluable insights. Now, whether you're a business apprentice, a small business owner, an entrepreneur, or someone seeking expert guidance for running a successful venture, Canada Business Talks is designed to inspire and empower you. So we want you to join us on this journey of transformation and growth in the business world. We're going to soon be joined by Carol Anne Hilton, CEO and founder of the Indigenomics Institute and the Global Center of Indigenomics, for an unforgettable experience that celebrates Carol Anne's hard work and commitment to About Canada Business Talk. Canada Business Talks is for people who infuse purpose and passion into their business processes to progress in growth and in impact. This series aims to, first of all, develop entrepreneurial resilience in any circumstance. 2, to develop an eye and understanding for what lies ahead. And 3, provide practical strategies to manage and grow your business. We want to thank our sponsors, our banking partner, RBC, our shipping partner, UPS, and our accounting software partner, Xero, for supporting this initiative. Thank you. Now, if you're a small business owner in Canada, this is exciting. You can apply to be featured as the UPS Small Business of the Day. Every day, Canadian SME Small Business Magazine, with support from UPS, our exclusive shipping partner, features a different small business on our social media channels. As the UPS Small Business of the Day, you'll receive free promotion on Canadian SME social media channels. So you can apply now, this is exciting, by visiting canadiansme.ca. Now let's take a short break and see what's in store for you by our exclusive sponsors, UPS and Xero.
You dreamt big. You made the leap. You and your "we're not stopping at small" business. Doesn't matter you've never done it before. You unlock those problems. You adapt to change. You learn to evolve. You're pioneers in challenging times, finding your own frontiers. Wherever you e-commerce, UPS is with you. So nothing is going to hold you back.
All right. Now, please help us welcome Na Shah, Vice President, Commercial Financial Services, Indigenous Markets in the BC region at Royal Bank of Canada. Na leads a team of specialized relationship managers to support Indigenous communities in British Columbia. Collaborating with partners, the team provides a wide range of financial services and they build customized solutions for First Nations and their economic development corporations. Na started her banking career in 2001 and joined RBC in 2007. She brings over 20 years banking experience, has taken relationship manager, credit underwriting, and adjudication and leadership roles in retail banking, wealth management, group risk management, operations, and commercial banking. Na was annual convention award recipient in 2005 and 2019. She earned her MBA from the International University of Monaco and Bachelor of Commerce from the University of International Business and Economics in China. She holds a CRC designation from Risk Management Association and an FMA from the Canadian Securities Institution. I need a lot of breath for this most impressive bio. Na believes life is all about experiences. She enjoys travel and has visited over 50 countries, and she's learned to respect diverse ways of living and appreciate different perspectives. Welcome to Na Shah.
Thank you, Elsa. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Na Shah, and I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of RBC to welcome you to Business Talks hosted by Canadian SME Magazine. Amidst unpredictable world events and evolving economic conditions, it is safe to say that business owners are operating in the world where change is the only constant. As you look to navigate entrepreneurship in this very different world we live in, we know that it's critically important to hear about different perspectives, stories, resources, and tips to help you survive and, more importantly, thrive. Indeed, RBC's continued commitment to supporting the Canada Business Talks series feels that much more important and purposeful today. We're very thrilled to see Canadian SME Magazine take the lead in bringing thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and co-sponsors together to create this important forum. We hope these engaging conversations will deliver top insights and inspirations to help you successfully navigate the future. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Carol Anne Hilton, CEO and founder of Indigenomics Institute and Global Center of Indigenomics. Carol Anne is Nuu-Chah-Nulth descent from Hishkwet Nation on Vancouver Island. She is committed to increasing the visibility and inclusion of Indigenous business and economic growth globally. With over 20 years of experience in community, business development, economic design, Carol Anne is focused on multi-generation indigenous wealth creation. Carol Anne is an international award-winning, best-selling author of Indigenomics, Taking a Seat at the Economic Table, a highly recommended book if you haven't read. I have audiobook and a paper book as well. If you haven't read this, it's very good, very practical guide. She's also an adjunct professor at Royal Rose University of Business and School. She currently serves as a board of director on the McGill University Institute for the Study of Canada, MIT ACS Research, and BC Digital Supercluster. Her work has been most recently recognized with the inaugural Nation Builder Award from the National Angel Capital Organization in 2022, the BC Achievement Foundation's Award of Distinction in Indigenous Business, as well as Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business National Award and Excellence in Aboriginal Relationships. I'm looking forward to hear Carol Anne's vision of Canada's future, one that focuses on rebuilding and strengthening Indigenous economies and the positive impact this will have on Canada's success. Once again, I'd like to thank Canadians Me Magazine, our co-sponsors, and all of you for joining us today for a program that uncovers and celebrates inspiring stories and the individuals like Carol Anne Hilton. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Alyssa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Na. And yes, with such an incredible background, we want to learn as much as we can from you. So thank you so much for joining us today, Carol Anne. First of all, can you share a bit about your journey and what inspired you to start the Indigenomics Institute and the Global Center of Indigenomics?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. Big appreciation for your work and vision for businesses within the Canadian economic landscape. I'm signing in today from the Victoria, from the Lekwungen territory. A little bit about my journey. I have a belief of the last 1,000 choices that we made, and I won't go through all of those choices today, but I have a very strong belief of where I put my attention, focus, and relationship, and all the combination of that really was the foundation of the journey here. What I saw was a very strong but not visible narrative around the design of the Indigenous relationship in Canada, that we were designed out of the Canadian economy systematically. So just as much as that was a blueprint or design, we also needed a design for designing ourselves back in. And that I didn't see that specifically happening within a national context of a process for our inclusion of sitting at the national economic table. This concept of the absence of design, establishing a forward trajectory of Indigenous economic growth that wasn't for growth itself, but was for how value creation happens and what that means within a business context. And finally, to uphold a story of Indigenous economic power, how we've been able to establish and look at business as a tool while we are still recovering as individuals, as families, as communities from the legacy of the residential school systems, of the Indian Act, of the reserve systems, and all of those aspects that have deeply impacted our Indigenous reality.
Absolutely. And so in your book, you talk about this, you discuss the importance of Indigenous economic principles. So how can a small business owner integrate these principles into their operations for success?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the book upholds these principles of design from an Indigenous worldview, and some of that includes this concept of respect for life, for respect for time, and respect for our future. That multi-generational approach, I think, is essential, that is deeply embedded in my own New Channel worldview around this concept of respect for life. So looking at that question of how do you uphold life within the center, that is not something that we talk about within the business realm by any means, but is deeply embraced and upheld within a common foundation of what we could call an Indigenous worldview.
I mean, respect, that's, you say we don't talk about this a lot, respect for life. I really believe this is something we need to start doing more. So your voice is definitely needed and necessary. You have had a remarkable career, from being an adjunct professor to serving on all these different advisory boards. What key lessons, I'm sure there are many, but what comes to mind in terms of what you've learned along the way that could benefit aspiring entrepreneurs?
I have sat on a significant amount of key boards, and my approach has always been, what is the learning space that I'm entering into? And to know when that time is done and to be able to contribute, to learn, and to facilitate participation in a way that supports the organization as well as your learning. I think that's really important, to be able to participate, to be able to bring focus to the advancement of an organization, and to be able to look at a forward-looking narrative around your own learning space and boards and institutions. Thank you.
Yeah. And you've partly answered this, I think, but I have a feeling you have a lot more to say on it. As a new chah nulth descendant, how has your Indigenous heritage influenced your approach to business and to leadership specifically?
I come from a powerful legacy of New chah nulth people on the west coast of Vancouver Island near Tofino. We come from a legacy of whalers. We come from a legacy of the potlatch system. We come from a legacy of a concept of wealth as it exists in the natural world, a concept of wealth that is based in natural law. And all of those aspects bring focus to Indigenous worldview, its relevance, and its application in business, in economy today and our future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about, I imagine there have been many challenges you faced in your career. I'm a big fan of learning from all of those challenges and the fail forward kind of approach. So can you tell us about a specific challenge you faced in your career and how you overcame it, and what advice you would give to small business owners facing similar challenges?
That's a great question. I feel like the soft business skills, less than the hard business skills. I think your personhood, how you show up in your business, your personal energy, your courage, those aren't things that are talked about within entrepreneurship enough. And I was blessed to have very strong supporters and advisors who, as we talked about scale was distinctly aligned to also my energy, my actual physical capabilities of what growth and what the design of that looked like. So my ability to show up as my best person, my best energy and focus and attention, I think has been a challenge with the remarkable growth of Indigenomics. But I think to align scale to yourself, not just as business outcomes, I think is essential for small business owners to put yourself in the model. Thank you.
Oh, I like that. Put yourself in the model. Having personal energy and courage. I love that. Can you, you could speak maybe on this more. You were the only Indigenous person appointed to the Canadian Economic Growth Council. What opportunities do you see for Indigenous businesses in the Canadian economy today and in the near future?
I think that the Institute established after my being on the Canadian Economic Growth Council, what I was able to see was this absence of design, where programs at a national level were a piecemeal approach, but not establishing a strategic objective of how specifically value creation happens in the Indigenous economy. So I really wanted to focus on a strength-based narrative of the growth of Indigenous businesses and the significance of that, the opportunities that exist, including bringing visibility to Indigenous businesses, whether that's in cities or rural areas. It's about bringing tools, investments, relationships, and building an ecosystem that includes Indigenous businesses.
Okay. Which do you see a timeline for that, or how? I mean, that it seems like a lot that we need to work on in terms of creating this design.
I think the Institute identified $100 billion potential. That the remarkable aspect of that, to be able to do that in this generation, it's important to know that Indigenous peoples were only even able to get lawyers since the early 60s. So our ability to facilitate our economic space has leaned heavily on our exclusion. And I think that with a field of opportunity that has identified Indigenous economic space, the possibility through structures such as procurement to include Indigenous businesses within that and to value that within your supply chain is a huge opportunity that I think the SME environment in Canada can look to directly for leadership in economic reconciliation.
Absolutely. Now, your work has received numerous awards and recognition. What do you believe are the critical factors that have contributed to your success in advocating for Indigenous economic development?
I think a collective vision, a vision that makes sense, that we're all a part of it, that Indigenomics as a concept is really about facilitating an economic platform for inclusion, design, putting a highlight and focus on Indigenous excellence and coming from a strength-based approach. I like the concept that Indigenomics as a new word, which originated as a hashtag on social media, established a neutral space where it wasn't weighted within the legal environment, that it was a place and an invitation to participate and to lead from.
Now, small businesses often face financial constraints. How do you suggest they can align their goals with the principles of Indigenomics to build sustainable and resilient enterprises?
I'm not sure that's even specifically to Indigenomics as much as in today's business environment, to be successful has to have the foundation of being collaborative, to uphold each other. And I think that this concept of competition has aged out in a system which calls us to relate to each other in new ways, which calls us to, in those relationships, to be able to look at collaboration as a strategic advantage. So looking for those places for collaboration and relationship in a larger ecosystem, I believe, is foundational to success of small business today.
Absolutely. So less competition, more collaboration. Yeah, love it. What advice do you have for small business owners who are looking to create meaningful partnerships? If they're talking about collaborations, since we just talked about being collaborative, what are some of those, or what's advice that you would give them in terms of, particularly with Indigenous communities or organizations?
I think the first is to start kind of bringing into your awareness this slate of Indigenous businesses that is expressing in this army or this uptake of Indigenous businesses that are creating new pathways and new avenues. I think that looking at procurement as a tool within a company's supply chain, how do you value or uphold Indigenous economic reconciliation? Be bold, make a statement. We look at how to identify Indigenous supply partners in what we do, making a statement of how that's growing, being visible with that, are all important aspects of beginning to create meaningful partnerships. And finally, I think it's just starting with a conversation. It's starting with an invitation, whether it's business networks or chambers of commerce or inviting into the space and creating a learning environment, all are essential in creating partnerships with Indigenous businesses.
And one last question, unless another one pops up for me. In your opinion, what are the key trends or opportunities that small business owners should be aware of in this ever-evolving business landscape, especially in the context of Indigenous entrepreneurship?
I think the major one is there's a recent metric that identified that Indigenous businesses are growing at 5 times the national rate. To look at that as an opportunity, to look at that particularly from an investment perspective, Indigenous business is a strategic advantage. Building partnerships, building the investment ecosystem, building within the supply chain, and demonstrating leadership in economic reconciliation, that is a prevalent approach to being able to center the values of a company and establishing a solid response to that in leadership actions.
Wow, thank you. We're just getting in. I love this live thing. We're getting some questions from the audience. Can you share some practical strategies for small businesses to adapt to the changing economic landscape? Yes, especially in light of recent global events. Yes, I'm glad that one came in. Any practical strategies?
Personally, I think is the cost of money, understanding that cost of potentially how that's changed over a rapid time and how to manage that particularly within this economic environment, is essential. Being strategic within that, I think I could probably speak for an hour specifically on that question, but I think just strategically identifying how to position the existing costs of money within your business is an essential exercise today in today's economic landscape.
Great, good answer. You have been a strong advocate for Indigenous economic development. So how can businesses, both large and small, actively support and collaborate with Indigenous communities to create some mutually beneficial partnerships?
I think that's an organic process that's already happening. It's building foundational economic response to a perceived target of $100 billion Indigenous economy. To be able to name how value creation is happening with Indigenous partnerships, I've seen historically a strong reference to businesses describing solely on the cost side of the equation and starting to look at the generative, constructive economic design. How do you value the outcomes of these partnerships in economic terms is a trend that is essential, and a very strong voice that I've had that Indigenous peoples cannot exist entirely on the cost side of the equation of this country. We need to be able to be seen as generative economies, investable businesses, and strategic advantage from a business perspective.
Interesting. And it's good to hear that it is organically starting, has begun. Another question from the audience: in your experience, what are the key qualities or attributes that successful entrepreneurs possess? Oh, that's another one you could probably speak on quite a ways. Also, how can aspiring business owners cultivate these traits? So what key qualities or attributes? Mm-hmm.
I tend to lean on the personhood versus the hard business skills. I think that the emotional maturity to respond to a changing business landscape daily, sometimes hourly, are essential. Having a strong emotional response, I think, is key from my perspective. I think, again, those sides of nurturing relationships, nurturing collaboration, looking at competition, but placing that within a collaborative lens, I think is essential quality, and absolutely cultivating the realization of the economic development process and placing that in context of Indigenous business outcomes for an individual is directly related to the family, that family is directly related to the community, and that community is directly related to future generations. And I think that is the distinction of Indigenous business, to look at those as premises of an individual isn't just in business by themselves. It affects their family, it affects future generations. And I think that's an essential realization of qualities of a larger meaning of business and a larger outcome potential of it, that we're all related and interconnected.
Oh, that's music to my ears. I love to hear that. Wonderful advice. Okay, I have another question. Can you be brutally honest with the struggles of reconciliation being a trend that corporations need to check off the box? Aha, this is a great question. And how you were able to still create a sovereign path right through the mainstream world?
That is probably one of my favorite questions that I've been asked.
It's great.
Brutally honest. Thank you for the invitation. I think that the space to address assumptions, so if we're speaking to a small business, to have uncomfortable conversations, to actually have the space of it. There's a lot of kind of shoulds. We should be somewhere other than we're at. I love the words of Honorable Murray Sinclair, the past chair of the Truth and Reconciliation. And he says essentially that we have called you to the pathway, we point you to that, and it's up to you to do the climbing. So he's referring to the metaphor as a mountain, that where are we starting on that? and to have uncomfortable conversations, to be able to acknowledge the learning space of where you're at, and to acknowledge the leadership space of learning is essential. There's too much trying to establish outcomes based on Western perspectives versus being isolated from actual individual, family, or community outcomes. I think that the outcomes of reconciliation have to be upheld where it's describing what is value creation, and that it changes and shifts the lives and experiences of those most marginalized within a system that has established hundreds of years of economic isolation. To uphold that uncomfortable truth, to build from that, and to describe outcomes that change lives. That is actual economic reconciliation. And to be accountable to our leadership results. And the metric component of that is what and how is value creation happening in the process of economic reconciliation.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question from someone in the audience. I work with the Canadian Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce and help certify businesses as diverse suppliers. What are ways to target, access, and build networks within the queer Indigenous community to give them an opportunity to join global supply chains?
That is a great question that might be slightly 10 feet outside of my immediate realm. I think is equally important in terms of the example of, I sit as the Canadian co-chair on the Canadian Chamber of Commerce Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council for the past 2 years. I would look to work there, who I believe they also have a similar council that supports that specific narrative. But I think the combination of that, there is work at the national level around accessing and alignment of these businesses and the supply chain overall. Thank you.
Okay. One final question, I believe. Again, I'll reserve the right to ask another one if one comes in, but this final one says, as a small business owner, I often find it challenging to access funding and resources. What advice do you have for securing financing and support to scale my business sustainably?
I think that there's significant resources. I know here in BC, we have the Small Business BC as examples that demonstrate accessible points to be able to do that. So I think it's accessing in your network the kind of satellite offices and institutions that support that type of investment.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to give a moment here to see if anything else has come in. All right. So, I mean, honestly, it's almost like just a launching point to find out so much more. And I think we can all do that by buying your book. And that's exactly what I am going to be doing, Indigenomics, shortly after this. We really appreciate your time, your expertise, the candid way you answered our questions, and some that we kind of threw at you there. Your contributions have enriched our understanding and obviously are going to inspire many to take their business to new heights. So thank you once again, Carol Anne Hilton, for being a part of Canada Business Talks and for being a beacon of inspiration to all of us. We look forward to staying connected and continuing our journey of growth and transformation in the business world. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I'm going to start to close by reminding you of the Canadian SME Business Awards. It's an important date on our calendars because it marks the day that we celebrate and congratulate those who have made a positive contribution to our country's economy. Since the inception of the Canadian SME Business Awards, we've had a very successful turnout with hundreds of small business owners as guests and celebrated over 500 diverse businesses from across Canada. This year, we want to continue to show that same support and appreciation for our small and medium-sized businesses. So you can apply now, as small businesses are eligible to apply for up to 5 categories. And winners get a trophy, a certificate signed by the Small Business Minister, and marketing exposure as well on our platform worth $20,000. So visit smeawards.ca. I would also like to again thank our sponsors, RBC, UPS, and Xero. And thank you all for being part of this inspiring conversation with Carol Anne Hilton, CEO and founder of the Indigenomics Institute and the Global Center of Indigenomics. We hope you found this interview both motivating and enlightening. Carol Anne's journey, insights, dedication to Indigenous economic principles serve as a powerful reminder of all of the possibilities that exist for small business owners, for entrepreneurs, and for all those seeking to make a positive impact in the business world. So as we conclude today's session, I encourage you to reflect on the key takeaways and actionable advice that Carol Anne shared with us. Remember that the spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation knows no bounds, and each of you has the potential to shape the future of your businesses and your communities. We'd also like to extend our gratitude to Carol Anne Hilton, of course, for her time, wisdom, and commitment to Indigenous economic development. Her contributions to our economic landscape are truly remarkable, and we're honored to have had her as our guest. Please stay connected with us for future webinars and events aimed at empowering and inspiring small business owners. Together, we can continue to learn, grow, and build a brighter future for Canadian businesses. Thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Canada Business Talks webinar. Have a fabulous day.